Hey, everybody. Welcome into the podcast. Man, we got a special guest today, man. Been waiting for this, Keith. It's like Christmas morning for me. What about you?
No kidding. Might be the most interesting guest we've had.
I think so. We've had some good guests, man. And
yeah, that's saying a lot. No offense to
our previous guest. But, yeah. So we've got a automotive industry guest coming on today, and I'm willing to bet that if you are a SEMA guy, if you're into sport compact performance, sport compact builds, anything like that, you're probably going to know who we're talking about. And you know, we can't wait for you guys to get this segment. I mean, Keith, when you say this, he's probably one of the most for real people that we, industry that is so involved in the industry at a level that it basically embodies what we've always preached, which is educate, right?
I think so I'm a fan. I think the thing I'm the most of a fan about, or the biggest fan of, is his work ethic and
Absolutely.
Just sort of proof that you can succeed. It is a very interesting success story, and success is defined by different people as being different things. But I just love I love the fact that I'm not alone in the world in sort of the crazy amount of hours that we put in.
Yeah,
but seeing
you
other
specifically
people,
because I'm not raising, my children are grown now, so I've got a little bit of a spare window of opportunity.
He'd probably be home anytime. But
Right.
I just think this is a great example for anybody that wants to get into the industry, and that
Absolutely.
could mean many things, from building to designing to marketing.
Right, and where the industry's going. I mean, I think most of you guys out there, all of our audience, you understand that Keith and I do what we do because we like to inform people about our industry and the changes that it will continue to go through for generations. It has to. It's you have to move forward with progress, and so we're just super. In the words of this guest, I'm super stoked, man. Right? This is probably one of the dopest guests that we've ever had on. And I'm digging it, man. I'm so excited to have him on, and I can't wait for you guys to hear his story. So, Keith, what do you say? Should we just go ahead and?
Yeah. So this is Neil Tjin, who we got the honor to hang with for a full podcast, and we met in person for the first time at SEMA 2022 at the most recent SEMA show. And Neil is one of the most interesting dudes I have talked to in the industry, for sure. And you young people, if you're kids and you're looking to get into the industry, you love cars or you want to work with cars,
right?
This is the guy to watch. This is the guy to follow. This is the guy to listen to. So, without further ado, here's the interview, everybody.
Okay, so here we are, the moment we've all been waiting for. We got Neil Tjin on. How's it going?
This is perfect. It's going in the gag reel.
This is
going in the gag reel.
Blooper.
Okay,
and Neil phone just fell. Sorry, sir.
It's good.
It's okay, man. Trust me, I pulled my headphones out the first time I had a guest on. It was an embarrassing moment for me. But anyway, we'll get through this. All right, so hey, welcome in, Neil. Thanks so much for being on the show today, man. We could not be more excited to have you here with us. If the world does not know about you and what you've done for the automotive industry,
all right,
they got to find out today.
They're
They're missing
so
out.
We're on an elevator. We've never met. You got 3 floors, probably 20, 25 seconds? Because I know there's a lot. You do a lot, Neil. So as we get on the elevator and I walk in and I go, what do you do? What's your answer?
Oh boy. In the quick one, like talk, I've been fortunate to play with cars. I tell my friend, my high school team coach, I get to build cars, design cars, play with cars, travel the world, and just really have a good time doing what I love. That's it in a nutshell.
And you are also recently appointed to a position. I don't want to. You can let the cat out of the bag. What is your role? You have a new role,
yes.
right?
Yeah. So after SEMA, I saw you guys. There's a show series festival, an electric EV festival called Electrify Expo. I am now the director of Electrify Show Off, and we are building the biggest, baddest EV car show in the world. Electrify Expo has over 1 million square feet. We have anything electric you can think of: scooters, razors, bikes, cars, trucks, paddle boards, anything you think of. So I'm going to be running the car show segment. So similar to like the Lightning you saw, BC Moto's Porsche, Wire's S2000, we're going to have the best of the best in the EV world. And I'm excited because it's new. As we're going to talk about, it's a new segment. And it kind of takes me back to when I started this in the 90s. I've helped build and design thousands of car shows. So this is a new space, and I'm excited to see where this car show segment and this space
So
takes
you've been
us.
doing this for, that's important. Like I want to go back to that for a second. So you've been doing this a while.
Yes.
Electric is new for all of us. You've been doing this before EVs were a thing, and you've been putting product out there. So you're a builder, yes, and
Yes.
you've built a lot of different stuff. It's always kind of got your thing on it. You're kind of like this, like Tim Burton of car builders. You know, you've got your Burton-esque, yeah, right.
Good analogy.
So, in fact, that's where we met you for the first time, SEMA. And you had an F-150 build that you just referenced that was it had the first air fully automatic, or I'm not doing it justice there, but
Yeah, fully functional, fully.
so clearly you think this EV thing is not a flash in the pan. And you've been around long enough to see lots of changes. And Jay and we're kind of in the middle of this. So, you know, we come from the automotive industry, and we try to stay neutral. You know, we try to stay like Switzerland. So we report on what we see, and if there's a trend, we call it out. And this is definitely a trend. But it's really divisive. And so you get the crowd that is very opposed to it because, there's lots of reasons, right? And so how do you, as someone that has to tread carefully in your shoes, how do you deal with that? Like, what's your response to, oh man, Neil, you're doing EVs? Why?
And yeah. I've actually seen some of the comments about that, Neil, and it's interesting to me how people will take a side with it. And it's what I don't get, and Keith and I talk about this all the time, we're not anti-EV, we're not anti-ICE. There's room for both. I think that we can share the platforms and show people what we can do with it rather than fight to get rid of it. And I think that's what's going on, right?
Yeah, so I started right out of high school. And like I said, I've been Hondas, Acuras, and the Nissans, the S2000s, Scion, then I got Ford, Dodge, GM. I've done 4 cylinders. We've done motor swaps. I worked at Vortex. I've done 1,200 horsepower supercharged motors. I've done 1,200 horsepower turbocharged RB26, my 4-door Skyline. So I've seen the trends come and go. I was part of the Fast and Furious 1 and 2 back in Miami. I've been part of drag racing with Nairo and NDRA back when Steph was trying to run 9, Sean Carlson. I've seen it all. 2 years ago, I was approached by Ford to build the first Mach-E. Von Gittin did his 14 million horsepower motorsports. I did more. I drive it. I did my more SEMA build, but daily driver. 2021 SEMA, the feedback was not great. It was more of the negative. What's an EV? Why are you doing an EV? I still had my style to it, air suspension, 22-inch Fosins, full Recaros. And we didn't know each other 2 years ago, but it won Best of Show Ford. Not just in the Ford booth. I won Best of Show Ford at SEMA, which had never been done before. And it was an EV. So the feedback was okay, but it was more 50-50. And there wasn't a lot of technology. There wasn't a lot of parts, verbiage, nothing. Go a year later, the response with the Lightning was a million times better. More parts you guys saw in the booth. The biggest question I get is not why'd you build an EV or the EV is cool. It's always the question about range.
Okay.
Yep.
How far do you go? Do you run out of gas? And I'll tell you this, I do tread lightly based on my position in the industry, but I don't have a filter. Meaning I'll say it as it is. It is a learning experience. And that's also why I took the job with Expo. So right after I saw you guys, I flew to Austin for the finale. Kind of as a spectator, as someone seeing if I wanted to explore the space. I learned a lot. I met a ton of EV guys way smarter than me. And I'll tell you this story. I drove my Lightning home from SEMA. And Ford knows this, and I'm close with Ford. It was took me 12 hours to get home.
From Vegas to LA.
400 miles. LA. And the reason being, the car was brand new. The mileage the brain hadn't started calculating. And then I put 24s. I had my tent. I had about an extra 1,000 pounds. So I did a photo shoot in the desert with Vossen. Kind of calculated, but the mileage was off. Long story short, I learned about charging stations, how long it takes to charge, where to stop. I got home, but it was a learning experience. Now I've had it for 4 months. I drive it around town. I've driven it to LA for the auto show. I've driven it to Joshua Tree. Yes, I have a charging station at the house, but it's really all knowledge based, because even for myself, I have 2 fully electric vehicles. I've had it for over 2 years. I'm still learning. But like I was talking to a guy this morning doing an editorial piece, people are scared. You can't modify them. You can, you just have to do it correctly. And then you have to do enough research on your mileage, charging stations, different kinds of chargers, level 1, level 2, level 3. But I drive my Mach-E and my Lightning every single day. So I don't see it as a fad. I actually see it as I call it the next wave.
Yeah.
In millennium terminology. It's gonna be the future. Sorry. I don't get into politics. I don't get into gas, money, just from a builder, designer, and trend standpoint. Everything's going electric. Look at scooters, drift trikes, anything. My whole garage, I used to have stuff for my kids. You'd have to put gas. Plug and play now. I don't have a single gas thing in my. And if it's happening in the scooters, Razor, Super 73, all those companies, I'll give you an example. At Electrified Expo, we have over a dozen OEM vendors.
So now I got to ask you a question I'm going to throw a new one at you here. My son and I we trail ride. We ride woods bikes. So he has a Yamaha right now. I've got a Honda. We've had various stuff, right? And I know you had Super 73s on the back of your build that we saw. That's the one industry power sports wise that I haven't seen jump on this yet, and it's interesting to me because when we woods ride, like if you go out and you ride 10 miles, you're done. Like, that is a beating. 10 miles will take you a couple hours. And, you're doing single track. You're doing stuff that you're doing 5-10 miles an hour, and then you run into a wide open section. So why? Because that seems like the perfect fit to me for an electric. Why? Are you seeing any entries from like a Honda or Yamaha on their dirt bike side where they will be going electric?
You touched on one. You might, and two, I do, because it's crazy. I was up in Marquette's after Austin, or up there, it's all about outdoor exploration. Same thing. It's coming. I see it with bikes, dirt bikes, four-wheelers. I mean, it's funny now. People are designing paddle boards for Long Beach and I believe San Francisco or Seattle. We've got water sports, with EV. Sounds kind of weird, but it's coming up. No, I think you've done something with the outdoor stuff. I have a relationship with Honda. I think eventually everybody will get there. I do still believe we're a little bit ahead of our time.
Yeah.
Even with Expo being at 1 million square feet and being right now, we're at 7 events. Next year, we're going to go to probably 10. We're eventually going to expand worldwide. I think we're still at the cusp of it.
Yeah, Jay and I call this like the first gen. We're still in the first generation. I mean, if you think about like your first iPhone, and how different they are now, or really if you want to go pre-iPhone, right? So we had portable phones, we had the StarTAC flips and all that. But then the second generation was really where we turned a corner and things got really good. And that's kind of our, perspective of we just keep reminding people like, lithium batteries are probably not going to be the go-to for in 5 years, maybe, somewhere in there. But yeah, it's kind of a Gen 1 thing.
Yep. Yeah, I believe as more research, find products like that. It was funny, Marquette, there's a mine that goes through town, and they're filled, and it's all the stuff for lithium batteries. So I think technology changes and we learn more. Like you said, we're only here. It's only going to get better.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think too, something else that we have to realize is that who is this future for? And we all have kids, right? I mean, so we know we need to start paying attention to what our kids are looking to purchase in 15 years. What are they after? And that's who we need to be focusing on. And this is why I appreciate what you're doing with the Electrify Expo. It's all about education, right? I mean, it's 100% what it's all about. So, and I appreciate the fact that you're telling us, hey, it took me 12 hours to get home from Vegas, right? And that's significant. But I think in a matter of, like you said, educating someone on how do you deal with this is you plan your trips out like you're supposed to. So I've talked to people who have gone cross country that have done the homework, the footwork. They know where their chargers are at, and they've had zero issues with it, And so there is a big argument there. I get that, but I'm starting to see some bend a little bit with the ICE guys. There's a couple of organizations out there. We have several friends that are in these organizations, and their engine rebuilding segment. I had a guy say, and I thought it was a great analogy, that the future is really not all electric. It's going to be more eclectic. In other words, we're going to have to see more of a little bit of everything in order to get to where we want to be with that. And there has to be an understanding of that. So I personally appreciate what you're doing with that and am excited to come to one event specifically, and that's a Seattle show this year. So I will be there. So
you will be my guest. We'll walk around. You'll see so much. Only place, and if you bring your test drive, like I said, 13, 14, 15 models of cars. We have like 20, 30 bike vendors. You can ride bikes. You can test scooters, skateboards, all the cars. And then we've got a bunch of different segments where you'll see a lot of guys now are like, we haven't even talked about this, are making their old cars EV. That's a whole nother thing I'm learning.
Well, we saw a DeLorean. We saw a DMC-12 at the SEMA show, and the company fully converted it, and they sell the conversion kits. And it was fascinating.
Yep. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And Ford being as smart as they are with that Illuminator crate motor, it was huge. Yep. We were there when Jay Leno revealed the F100 Resto with the Mach-E interior. Yeah. Were you part of that build itself as well?
No, I know the people who built it. That's where I built the Mach-E. I was with the Illuminator motor because I have 3 older projects that I'm going to eventually make electric. That's what I was saying. 2021, it was so hard to talk to people about motors, batteries, wiring, how to make it all fit. Now, the possibilities are endless. I mean,
you've done. This is not. Let's go average because every build is different. How long does it take you, average time frame, to complete a build?
SEMA builds are quicker, even though they're well, I call all my builds SEMA builds, but I'll give you an example. The Lightning was done in 6 weeks, which is incredibly fast. You probably beat the Durango was about 10 weeks, but we had to film. I'd say an average build is about 8 weeks, but I plan probably 2 to 3 months out.
Yeah.
Ordering parts, booking shops. Like I said, I've done, including this year, we're at 162 SEMA builds, give or take. So it's kind of like clockwork. And then, but this year I learned I'm actually doing 4 builds right now when I typically don't start till the summer. So right after SEMA, we're working on 4 builds now, and then have another 2 before the summer, and then the summer, another 1 or 2. So I would say 2 to 3
for the kids, months. And I see this, and hopefully we will do a good job of putting this in front of some kids. I see you being kind of an inspirational figure for kids that want to get into this. And I can tell you, everybody, firsthand, just one of the things that I picked up on right away, and I know we joked about this. People probably think it's easy and you don't do anything, and I can tell you guys firsthand in the communications that we've had with Neil, he is a hustler. He is always working. He's always doing something to line up the next project. He's always communicating. He's always going through his list of things that he's got to do. You were just talking about your order list and all that. I mean, that's a work ethic thing, and you definitely have that. So from a perspective of how you got into this, right? So if somebody wants to perhaps go down this road, because there's some really cool parts of what you do. Is that possible today? Because you got into this a while back. I mean, is it possible to make a career out of this if you just start, like somebody that wants to start now?
Yeah, I honestly, so I noticed my daughter's 12 now, a little smarter, but she always thought dad has like 12. But, I started in high school. Funny story, and probably on Google because I wrote a bunch of articles on it. I've been with my wife since 95. It was her and my brother. This really started as a hobby. I tell everybody, I didn't go to school. I was even a magazine editor for 8 years. No joke. Again, no filter. I can't spell. I am illiterate. I could write a hell of an article. But everybody's like, you went to school for writing. No. What I tell everybody, it's all relationship based. Just like meeting you guys. I got out of high school. I started working. I built the car. My wife, girlfriend at the time, my brother, we drove up and down the East Coast. You got to remember, there were no trailers. We grew up in Miami. So the scene wasn't as big in the 90s. We helped Hot Airport Nights come to the East Coast, Naira, NDRA. Long story short, we drive up and down the East Coast. And again, it's going to sound funny, but people are like, who are these 3 Asian kids driving everywhere? Atlanta for Nopi, Philadelphia, Chicago, Texas, Tennessee. So we would meet these partners. Partners would recognize us. You have cool builds. I had no idea what I was doing. There were no sponsors. I call them partners now. We would literally put proposals together, me and my wife, in the house, take pictures, no digital,
Right.
glue them to the paper. If I could find it, I have my original Toyo Tires 1996 proposal. But we would send out proposals. There was no email, so you'd mail out hard copies. And it just kept going. I kept trying to always over-deliver, excuse my language, build cool shit that stood out from everybody else. We flew out media people to Miami. I think my Skyline this doesn't happen anymore, had 7 covers in 1 month worldwide. So, yeah, that kind of put us on the map. I love talking to people. As you guys know, I can't shut up. And I love teaching. You know, I was fortunate enough, that's what I tell everybody. I had mentors in our space, Craig Lieberman, RJ DeVera, guys that I looked up to. And the best part is, you said, Keith, I get to do that now, not just with my kids, but I get to give back on how did you get there. So to answer your question, I think so. It's a little different. When you're on the East Coast, everybody wanted to go to the West Coast, but the competition was less.
Okay.
For me now, it's you just have to kind of stand out. Like, you have to do what you're going to say and more. You have to try to build good vehicles. A good example, Ford. There's always Ford builders, but some of them stay, some of them fall off. Why do you fall off? You don't do your quarterly report. You don't build a good vehicle. You don't have the right partners. You don't go to shows. You don't post on social media. You don't do recaps. No disrespect. Why in the hell would Ford give you a car?
So you and I have I knew we had some things in common. There's a lot more in common here as I'm listening but met my wife in 95. I also have a 12-year-old. You might be, Neil, the first person that I've met in a long time that stays busier than I do, and Jay can vouch for me there. Like, I'm literally like,
for sure,
I will watch some TV, but it's always sort of like, there's always that motor, right? So as you're sort of outlining, you've got great work ethic. There's an element of just running the long race, right? So even if mistakes happen, and they do for all of us, you just go back the next day and you go again. And you've definitely got that. Okay. Yes, so now, you've kind of laid out some of your recipe. All right, let's say you get your hands on a DMC 12 with a flux capacitor and a, Mr. Fusion, and you go back about 30 years, 25, 30 years. And you have a minute in passing to give some advice to young Neil. Now, he's not going to recognize you because I've seen pictures of you in the past and you had hair. So there won't be the time paradox is safe. There's no risk of like the time paradox being an issue. But you've just got a quick minute to go, hey kid, and just throw out some life advice. Now, without the obvious bet on this sports team at 1,000,000 to 1 odds or whatever, right? Like, not that, but just life advice. What's your advice to young Neil, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. I have a 14 too, and we keep that. It's enjoy life, count your blessings, take care of people. And it's a small industry, and not just in cars, and everything I do in sports, in real estate. Just be a good person. Really enjoy what you do. In that sense, I don't really work. I do, but I don't, because I love what I do. Travel, spend time with your family, and give back. I've been so fortunate. I want to continue to be able to give back with my time, with my resources. And don't be better than anybody. People always ask, why do you share all your information? Someone shared it with me. Someone introduced me to you guys, to the right person at Ford. So again, without repeating myself, because my wife says I do, enjoy what you do. You're not going to please everyone. I tell my kids that. Make sure you're happy and do you. Never be satisfied. Always push the envelope and progress and think 1, 3, 5, 10 years ahead.
Great advice. Great advice for anybody.
All right, so 10 years ahead.
Sure,
where are we in 10 years? What's the industry look like in 10 years? Since you've opened that door.
Yeah. I think we're gonna get. That's a good question. Like in the EV space, I know where I think it's going. An industry in a whole, you're still gonna have look at your old school cars. When I say old school, 70s, 80s, your S15s, your Skylines, all your cool BMWs, your Euros. I think you'll see a lot more old cars with EVs. I do think you'll see a lot more EVs. I'll give you a quick goal of ours, and I don't know if my boss will see this. He probably will. You guys remember the Nopi Nationals, in Atlanta? 7,000 cars. I worked for Nopi and NDRA and Naira. That's our goal, to have a couple thousand vendors, thousands of bikes, thousands of EV cars, educational seminars. So that's the EV side. And our industry, I think, is going to keep growing. There's a lot of guys excited about building cars that I talk to. I don't think we're going anywhere, and we'll continue to grow. It's different now. There's not all shows. There's more meets. Social media is different. You don't have to wait 2 months to see a car in a magazine.
Right.
So I can see that progressing. And I'm excited because my son's in the cars. So he'll be 24 in 10 years to see where the next generation takes us.
Yeah, I agree with that. You're spot on there. And I also think that, we're starting to see some integration, or if you will, to other shows. Like, for example, CES was a huge platform this year for the automotive industry. And I think that we have to pay attention to what's going on with the electrification. Technology has to go along with, right? So I think that's going to make it a lot more interesting for a different demographic as well. Like, for example, my oldest son, he's a software engineer, but he loves EVs. I mean, he's on the hook now for a F-150 Lightning. He's asking me all these questions. Should I, Dad? Should I? It's your money. If you want to do it, try it. Why not? Just give it a. But my suggestion has been generational, right? So we're going to make some mistakes along the way till we get better at what we do. And I've said this. Keith will drop that bomb on me. So where do you think we'll be at in 10 years? And I've said it. I don't think that some of the marks that they're trying to hit is achievable. I do think you have to start somewhere. And I think that's the bigger argument that people have is, will it happen? And that's what people are afraid of. They're afraid of the change. But I personally don't think it's going to be that soon. It'll be there, but it'll just be a different generation, the next technology. And that's where CES comes into play here as well.
Yeah. So you've got, auto manufacturers, right? Like you guys just pointed to at CES dropping, major, Dodge just at the last one. So there's another shift here. SEMA, it appears, and they're not alone, is shifting so SEMA started as industry professionals, right? Specialty equipment manufacturers, right? And it was a members only, I guess. They probably wouldn't appreciate that term, but it was an industry professional membership meet. And we are seeing that shift to enthusiasts. So, this year they did the thing where, was it Friday, Jay, where you could get in if you weren't a member.
You could buy an all-day ticket
and
to get in.
It looks like next year they're going to expand that even more. I'm sure that decision didn't happen in a vacuum. They're seeing things that are driving them in that direction. It's saying, if we want to be around in 20, 30 years, this is where we think it's at. And now you're tied into doing shows. And is that happening everywhere? I guess there's your question. Are we opening these shows up to more and more non-professionals, so to speak, enthusiasts?
Yes. Well, so the Friday thing's been a couple years, but like I said, I've done probably 1,000 shows across the world. So not Canada, London, the UK, Jakarta, everywhere, Montreal. You got to think about it. It's a lot enthusiast based, like the non-SEMA shows, non-CES. They're just evolving with the times, and it's just like print was. I tell the story. I had one of the best tuner magazines, but my boss was closed-minded, and he didn't want to expand. And unfortunately, with print and everything, he went out of business. But I'm like, you can't be stuck in your bubble, just like our builds. And I think SEMA sees that. If they're gonna, I've been going to SEMA. This was my 23rd year, maybe 24th. I think 23rd. I bought booths. I built cars. I've worked for agencies, the whole 9 yards. And I've seen SEMA, what it was and what it's becoming. This is just my take, and I'm close with SEMA. If they don't change, they could die. They could end. Because you have to evolve with the times.
Right.
The EV market will be interesting. They put us in that corner. That EVs are going to start taking over little by little.
Right? I mean, where you were this year compared to where they had that group in like the North Hall or wherever it was the year prior, they're expanding that into more and more of the main area.
Yeah, and they're going to have to. And like I said, what we're doing with Expo and how that's growing and how that's going to end up going, to different countries, you have to, in anything we do, including SEMA and other shows, you have to keep growing and building. And that's why I think you're going to see the enthusiast stuff. They've got Ignited after, so walked over to Ignited, met more people there. A lot of just enthusiasts, not industry buyers and sellers. But I don't think they're going to limit themselves because it's not going to help the show grow. So I think it's going to become, I don't think it'll be all 4 days, but I don't see SEMA going back from allowing enthusiasts and people who typically can't get into the show get into the show.
Right. Your F-150 Lightning that you built for the 2022 show, I think with the timing of that was spot on for a lot of reasons. And as with the EV industry, the overlanding industry has just blown up like crazy. Yes. So I don't know if that was your intent coming into the show, was showing people what they could do with an overlanding type vehicle. Was that your intent with that, or?
Yeah, it was. So when we work with Ford Design, we can pitch different concepts, different ideas. And this one was a no-brainer, especially where we live. The beach 15 minutes away, Big Bear, Joshua Tree. It was, like I said, a no-brainer because we wanted to show what we were capable of, going hiking, having the bikes. And when I designed it, I thought of everything. The tent, the solar panels, the extra 3 lithium batteries, the 2 e-bikes, the razors. It's got a fridge, the grill, and everything is plug and play. So it was, because like you said, even with your son, people weren't sure, can you do it? Some people you see in the comments, stupid, you're going to go to hike and you're not going to be able to charge, you're going to run. Yeah, it's called planning. I'm not.
Well, and you're not, like, I will, so we travel a lot, and I have owned quite a few RVs. And we were in Yosemite this summer and passed a couple Rivians pulling Airstreams down in the park. There's charging stations in the park. Yellowstone last year did a test pilot of fully automated, I'm trying to think of what they called them, but they were shuttle buses, and they were all electric, and they would driverless take you around. And so they're putting accommodations in some of these locations where you're not dead. If you end up with a dead battery, you've got options, and that's happening more and more. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, my again, I should say from a no filter. I actually went under the 0 on the way home. I went, and here's what no one knows, and I don't know if anybody's ever said this. I did it, so I was able to drive. So I planned. And it was actually my MapQuest sent me the wrong way. And someone was following me, and I'm like, I felt it was off, but I followed Google MapQuest or whatever it was. And I was on 0. So I pulled over, I told my buddy, go the way I think it is. Was about a mile away. So I was like you said, you're either going to tow it or you're going to try it. I had no choice. I drove like 1.3 miles under zero, but I've learned from it. What's my car capable of? I didn't plan well from SEMA because I was exhausted, and the photo shoot was in the desert, like you said. So I'm like, oh, I can make it to Baker. I was off a couple of miles. But you're seeing stuff pop up all over the place. And that's the cool part. Like even in Marquette, Michigan, they're setting up charging stations in the middle of nowhere. Like I went to do real estate and learn about the geography and overlanding. I saw 2 people on Sunday, 2, and there's charging stations. So I think eventually, as you guys said, it won't be tomorrow. It might not be in 10 years, but eventually there'll be enough for us to be able to get around.
So rumor has it, and I'm open to testing this sometime if we want to go shoot a video. So I always, when I tow with my RV, I always tow like on a trailer. I like my stuff, and I know you can tow what they say like 4 down, right? But I always just trailer my stuff. Yeah. I like my stuff. You're turning the wheels, you're putting miles on the rubber, you're turning the axle. I've just never been a fan of that. Plus, I've got like a couple Toyotas, and they don't like to be flat towed. So I trailer them. But rumor has it, Neil, that if you flat tow your EV and you turn on recovery, if you turn on your reclamation, you'll charge it up.
Yeah.
So if you got a buddy that'll tow you down the road for a couple miles, you get enough power to limp into the charging station.
We should test that.
Or you like I said, you flat tow it behind your RV and you're charging them up going down the road.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I learned driving locally. And I'm sure this is I haven't read up into it, but it's a lot more beneficial locally than on the freeway because you're braking and you're not. So for Vegas was straight shot home. Besides when we got off the chart. So those all things play factors. And again, this comes back to the educational part. This comes back to why we have seminars at Expo because none of us know this, including me. I literally flew to Austin the weekend after, and I wish I would have known the knowledge a week prior because I was straight up blind guessing going home. And then you learn from these people who've been through it, and we have these seminars, and they teach you all this stuff we didn't know. That's where it's cool because now we get to teach guys like your kids who want to buy an EV. What did we go through? What did we learn? And how do we better our experience driving an electric vehicle?
So let me segue from there into another teachable, and I'll try to bring it home here. I think we're getting close on time, but work-life balance. You are an example of something that Jay and I've drugged Jay into this lifestyle, whether he likes it or not. Where you and I've said for years, like, I think the days of our dads kind of working the same job for 40 years and retiring from that place, I'm not saying that will never happen again. I just think it's going to be less and less common. And we are this diversified group of people that have figured out, like, it's almost like an Uber driver. Like, you'll take gigs over here, and then you're doing this thing. Jay's out doing consulting for Valvetrain and helping design parts and that sort of stuff. And then we've got our thing. And so it's sort of this a la carte, right? You're sort of creating your own career, so to speak, but it's a very non-traditional one. And you clearly you do that. So being that busy, because that is a big demand on family and all that, what work-life balance, right? Again, we're talking to people that maybe want to get into this industry. They're probably going to have some of those same work requirements where they may not be able to do it full-time right away. What's your secret? Like, do you ever sit down and watch shows with your family on television? And what's your balance? Like, do you just turn your phone off at 8 p.m. and you're done? How does that work?
I know he doesn't.
This is the perfect. So I agree with the work thing. The only thing I've had longer than 2 years, well, my dog, is my wife. I've been with her,
Yeah.
27 years? But I agree on the work thing. To answer your question, it's grown over the years. I used to have my phone on 24/7. A couple years ago, I cut back. I still do emails. I have ADD. I don't have 100 text messages on my phone. They're on zero. I don't have 100 emails in my inbox. They're on zero. I try to reply. I try to relax a little bit more, but there is a balance. So back to my jobs, and this is not bragging. This is just me being crazy. Car design and builds. Now working for Expo. It's supposed to be part-time. I put in like 500 hours before I was hired. I love it. I want Expo to succeed. I want Show Off to be the coolest thing. I'm talking to Ford and Dodge about the builds for this year. I have 4 builds going on. Don't laugh. I do real estate.
Holy cow, man.
Yeah, it's everything I love. I don't laugh. That's why I have no voice. I coach a high school basketball team. We're about to win our first league title.
Awesome.
I love it, because I'm into sports. And then it's family. I do. I love TV. I don't sleep. I guess that's my thing. I try to spend as much time with my wife. I pick up my kids from school. I drop off my son. I'm at every basketball practice. I might have my phone
I've
with
done
me.
that. Yeah.
But I'm at.
Hey, you're there.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. As long as you're not the coach, if you're coaching and you're trying to, respond to some, yeah.
I am. High school. I think the best thing is, for me, I'm lucky. I have a wife that's been here since day one. I mean, she was there in '95 when we started, so she knows the hustle and bustle. She knows every SEMA, so that week's a no-brainer. And I would say the only other thing I think is just, again, back to planning. Like, I traveled a lot prior to my kids, and then I stopped for a while. I had my road show, but I had a good team in place. We used to do like 30 shows a year. And then I stopped traveling, besides SEMA, and if it was mandatory for a partner or something. And then this year, now they're a little bit older, I think I've taken 4 trips in SEMA. So they kind of get it. But I'd say probably 7, 8, 10 years, I cut back and wanted to be more of a dad, more involved. And I brought them into it. They come to SEMA. My son's in the cars. So the biggest balance is planning. Man, I can't say not overdoing it, because I'm like you. My mind is always turning.
We got to talk about the Son at SEMA thing, because I've been repeatedly asked that, and if you're doing it, I would consider it. We'll talk later, but I have questions.
I know all the tricks of the trade.
Yeah. Social media keeps you very busy, right?
Yes, that too. You know what though? It becomes, like people say, it's not a job. It becomes just part of the daily motion. Like posting. My son's IG page is bigger than mine for basketball, but it just becomes the norm. I wake up. I know how to post. I know what I keep Ford happy. The partner's happy. It's probably been what, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, of social. So yes, that's another intricate part of my day-to-day.
And I understand that very well. Keith and I, that's mostly what I do.
Yeah, we split duties. I can't do it. I'm like, dude, you got to take this on. I can't. And so Jay lives in that side, and thankfully I've stepped out. He's just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's part of it. And, my wife may not appreciate me checking analytics all the time. That's kind of what I tell her these days. Honey, I'm checking analytics. It's part of the job, right? But, yeah, it's so important. You have to stay on top of it. And I was telling Keith, that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about you, is that you're so accessible. And I think you have to be. If you're in this industry, and that's what it's all about, is educating and pushing that forward. So I guess before we close out of here, before Keith takes us out of here, Can you give out your socials so people? I'm going to say to everybody out there, our audience out there, please follow Neil. It's so fun to watch you do your thing every day, man. So put them out there for us.
Yeah. So I really live on Instagram, which ION. I post nonstop on there, and now, since I'm a working adult, I'm on LinkedIn.
I love it.
Quick story on that one. I set my account, say 10, 12 years ago. If you go to my picture, I still have a mohawk because I never went. I literally have a mohawk. But my boss at Expo said, hey, just update your LinkedIn with director of show off. And I'm like, this is stupid. And I told my wife, I'm like, babe, who uses LinkedIn? And within like an hour,
it's growing,
like 400
man. It is. Yeah.
That's how I reached out to you, Neil, was through LinkedIn. I mean, and even though we had spoken with you at SEMA and interviewed you and talked to you, I just kind of felt I started looking for your page, and there you were. I'm like, oh, and then I told him, I said, now he's with Electrify Expo.
It started as people basically looking for work and then Microsoft bought them, and now we use it like for brand connectivity with partners, as you call them. And and I don't think they're done. I think that's going to be LinkedIn. You will see some continued changes. Okay, so Electrify Expo. So if people want to meet you. Are you going to be at all of these that are coming up? And can they go to the website and find out the locations and dates?
Yeah, go to electrify.com. That's the whole festival. Expo.com. Go off. It's our show, bike show, venue. Yeah, I'll be at all 7. We start in Long Beach, and then we have San Francisco, Seattle, Washington, New York, Miami. I can go back home, and then finish with the Super Bowl in Austin the week after. Yeah, man, it's gonna be awesome. I would love for you guys to come out. I'm gonna be there working and setting up, but I'll be talking to people, getting them excited, putting them in touch with the right people. Long Beach and Austin, we have our the day before our seminar where we educate. This is probably not the right way to say it. Educate the crap out of people on every metric. So I'll be at all 7. I'll be at SEMA. I'll be on the road, and like you said, I'm easily approachable. The best part is there's only one Neil Tjin, so you can Google me. There's not a second.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, and you brought it up. I think we would love to come hang with you at one of these and do something live while we're there, whether that's just another podcast or, what have you. You've always got cool stuff, and you're an interesting person to talk to just because of, I think, not just your work ethic, but look, there are good examples and bad examples out there. None of us are perfect, but you're trying your best to teach, and I love that part of it. I'm sure I'm speaking for Jay too, but I think,
absolutely.
Okay, so I always throw out I try to throw out a little motivational comment when we wrap our podcast. So this is a new thing to you, Neil. Jay hears them all the time, and I always try to make them relevant to the topic. So whatever the podcast is or whatever the content is that we're covering. So I went and did some digging for this one. So let me, first of all, Neil, thank you for being on the show. It was a blast. I can't wait till we're together in person again. I'm looking forward to more surprises and more cool stuff out of you. That's always great to see what you're working on. Thanks for spending time with us. And so, here's my closing, motivational. Okay. In the words of Aristotle, so I went deep here, okay? We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. All right, everybody. For Neil and Jay, I'm Keith. There you have it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.